Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Priorities for the Shelby County Commission tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined tonight by Melvin Burgess, Chairman, Shelby County Commission. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, along with Bill Dries, Senior Reporter with the Memphis Daily News. Well, thank you for being here. We're trying to have some of your colleagues on, but scheduling-wise, we're happy to have you here, and we'll go through your priorities as chairman and talk a little bit with Bill about what some of the other commissioners are talking about right now. But let's just start with that basic question, your priority with the year ahead.
Well, my first priority is, as you know, last year up under our chairman, Terry Rowland, we approved that study for the minority business piece to ensure that all the business was being equally distributed among minority women and here local-owned business. So that was approved. So now we're in the process. We just passed two ordinances that went through. So I'm in the process of putting together some kind of committee to make sure we do an oversight of the program to make sure that we keep up with it and we communicate to the public properly, as well as making sure that our offices and our EOC offices is fully equipped with the personnel to make sure that we carry out what the report that Dr. Ramsey stated.
And the report found, I can't remember the exact numbers, but a very small percentage of minority women-owned businesses in a city, a county at least, that is a huge population of African Americans, obviously women too, and also there was a lot of out-of-town contracting. Is that right?
That's right.
Not as much locally.
That's right.
Focused contracting.
Yeah.
How quickly is it reasonable to make change on that front? I mean, people have habits, they have relationships, their existing contracts. What's the reasonable rate of change for this?
Well, we're trying to make sure that we try to at least have this thing rolled out in full complement at least by mid-February, because we're going to have to change forms, we're going to have to communicate to the businesses. There are a lot of things we're going to have to do to make sure that it's properly communicated. To me, the communication piece is one of the most important pieces, because we have a lot of people who used to do business with the county, minorities, local here, that they are kind of disgruntled, because it was a long process. There are a lot of caveats that caused a lot of interruptions. So we want to make sure that they're aware that we have changed procedures and some of the policies, because we had to change the procurement policies also. So, we want to let them know that, hey, we want you to come on, this is how we're doing it. Just keep us abreast to make sure that they are being invited to this new process.
Right, I mean, because some of it was not about, a targeting of, we're only going to work with out-of-town businesses or white businesses. It was the process for minority and women-owned businesses to be certified and had gotten very bureaucratic from a lot of people's point of view.
A lot of bureaucratic, and I know, it's at times, of course, if you're in business, sometimes, you have a habit of going with the same people because you know them, you have that business relationship. And sometimes, we just have to release that and try to keep the money here within Shelby County.
Last question on this, and I'll go to Bill. There was some talk, and it may have already happened, and I apologize if I get this confused, that, there's always the city does things one way, the county does things another. There was talk of unifying those standards so that if you were certified with the county, you were approved for the city and vice versa. Has that happened? Is that underway, or is that just still being talked about?
Well, it's still being talked about. I'm trying to, hopefully I get with the chairman over the city council to see how we can pull this together, because I think they're in the same process now, along with Shelby County Schools. They're going through a disparity study also. Yeah. So I think we're going to pretty much try to lead the way if we can and show them with some of the policies that we have to make sure that we all vet together, because as you know, we hold a fiduciary stick for the county school system. So whatever we approve as far as their funding, we'll hope that they would try to take that same model that we're using for minority businesses.
Okay, all right, Bill.
So, Mr. Chairman, do you think that with the county having this new emphasis on minority contracting, do you think that spills over to private businesses, because their share of this pie is much larger in terms of the business that they do with other businesses? Could this be an example for them, or do you kind of look at the private sector and say, that's our example?
Well, I think we can look at the private example and say, private sector, this is our example, of how we want to make sure that everybody get a piece of this. Like if we're going to do a big capital project, we want to make sure that it's even distributed. That's if we can get you qualified, or if you are qualified, because the key of it is you have to meet the standards. I how do we bring in a small company to compete with a big company if we don't really give them the resources and the tools? However, let's partner. Let's partner with some of the smalls, with the bigs, because some of them just don't have that $1 million bond. Some of them don't have the equipment. Some just don't have the resources to do that type of work.
So with part of the discussion that you all had was, okay, let's not just say that there has to be a percentage of minority businesses, quote unquote, minority businesses. Sure. Let's say there is a percentage for African American owned businesses. There might be a different percentage for women owned businesses. Do you think that that gets at the crux of this problem better than just having a percentage for all minority and women-owned businesses?
Well, like I stated, in the paper, I think it was with the Tri-State, was that, it's like when you build a home, you put the foundation down and you start building the structure, you don't really know what's going to be needed until you actually get in and start living in the home. Once you get into a new home, the lights ain't working, the plumber's not working. So it's going to be like, getting on the railroad track. The train is running. However, we might have to put some bits and pieces of it once we start seeing what's going to be the outcomes of what we put in place. So there again, that could be the answer. I just can't say that's going to be concrete, but the main thing is we want to try to make sure that we meet those numbers that we got from the study, with Dr. Ramsey and her group. So it could be some changes that we might have to put out there to make sure that we stay on that track and we meet those numbers. I think a good example was that when Commissioner Turner brought their resolution to where, we didn't want to exclude like the Asian, or I think it was the Asian woman, or outside of, the white woman, Caucasian woman, Hispanic. So he put in a little piece to where, we can make sure that it's equal with that group also, to where the EOC office can check and see, hey, look, we got this out here, we got this contract, so we want you all to also try to compete for the business also.
Right.
So it's things like that.
Right, and that turned out to be the key compromise in this. And a lot of the discussion was not about what should the goal be, but could this withstand a legal challenge if there is one, by going specifically with the disparity that was noted in the study from your consultant. So there might be a disparity with another group, but the percentage of business that group does with county government was so low that it didn't even register in the study.
And I think that's where I don't know if some of the commissioners didn't understand, but what happens is when the study tells you what the numbers are, then if you deviate, from the recommendations, then if we were to get sued, as the commission, then we won't have a leg to stand on with the person who did the study for us, because we have deviated from the numbers. Now, of course, we know that it picked out who did the participation with the county. Well, and that's why she made those recommendations based upon the participation. So if there is a group out there whose numbers didn't show up because they mean that they didn't participate. So, and I can see why, we did the resolution to make sure that we kind of bring them back in, even though their numbers didn't show that. So, and I think that's where the question mark came for some of the commissioners.
How valuable was it to have the Associated Building Contractors, the ABC as it's known in the county building, at the table on this? Because you all did something different this time from 20 years ago when we had our last disparity study and said, Associated Building Contractors, come to the table and tell us how you think this ought to work. And they did. Yeah,
and what we did was I formed an ad hoc committee. And if you notice that ad hoc committee, we invited, or who sat on the ad hoc committee was like Marvell Mitchell and Associates. They were different vendors who's been doing work with county government, because we don't have all the answers. So we wanted to hear from the community and some of those vendors or some of those businessmen who do business with the county to help us, guide us along, give us some recommendations on what they feel that will help us get this process through and make it equitable. So, and I'm still reaching out to, to a lot of those vendors. I'm meeting with them on a weekly basis saying, how does this look? How does this look? Can you give me some recommendations? So I'm going to continuously meet with them as we get this thing on the track to say, hey, look, what is missing? Tell me, what can you offer? You need to hear from the experts, and they're the experts because they have been doing business with county government.
Is there a difference now that everyone recognizes that the majority in Shelby County is African American? I mean, because 20 years ago, we weren't necessarily there. We were close to that. So there seems to be this realization that when you're talking about locally owned businesses, you are talking about African American businesses.
That's right. That's right. The whole thing, I think, what Shelby County is going to have to understand, not just Shelby County, the city of Memphis, I think government period, is that once we make everything equitable and we work together as a whole, we can solve some of these problems when it comes to poverty. We can solve some of these problems when it comes to no jobs, because we can keep the money here. We can employ our own people here with jobs, and it makes a difference. We talk about the crime. Why is the crime the way it is? Of course, we say, well, it starts at home. Well, the parents are not at home, obviously. Some's wrong. I mean, poverty is well and said here in this county, in the city.
Shifting a little bit to that issue of crime, which is on everyone's mind. I mean, a horrible spike in violent crime last year. The county, doesn't fund the Memphis Police Department, but there is the Sheriff's Department, the jail, the courts. What can the county commission do? I mean, constituents who look to you and say, what can you do to help bring this violent crime rate down?
It's amazing you bring that up, because what I did was, my term on the commission as chairman, is that I'm coming up with what you call a strategic plan. And we all got together, with our strategic plan to come up with 4 or 5 caveats that we thought were important to all commissioners, not just the East Memphis commissioners and not just the commissioners that represent the city. Because at the end of the day, we all have the same issues, and crime and police is one of the first issues. Well, I brought up, in which I'm still looking at, why can't Shelby County, the Shelby County officers, how come they can't collaborate with the city officers to come up with some kind of collaboration to where they're working together in policing as a whole? I know I might get jumped on fences, but yesterday I went down to a court case. I saw 5 Shelby County officers in one courtroom. And I know Tennessee Code Annotated talks about, the type of officer that needs to be in those courtrooms as far as trained, carrying a weapon, all of that. But I just feel that some of those officers can be on the street doing something besides being in that courtroom. But there again, I haven't really looked at that full-fledged to see what officers qualified to be in there. But I think Shelby County officers, outside of just doing warrants and outside of doing garnishments and things of that nature, can work together with the MPD to solve some of the gang issues, solve some of the issues that we're having that's causing these problems. Now, they're not going to be the full answer to it, because I think also community policing, having these police in our communities walking around, knowing the neighborhoods, knowing the kids, knowing the climate and the culture is very important. So it's building that relationship up, with both departments, I think can really, really make a difference.
The jail right now, and we were talking about vendors before, there's been a huge problem with a software implementation at the jail. The jail was already really, some people say, kind of at max capacity and a growing problem. But then the software, for those who didn't follow, inmates were being kind of lost track of, maybe released too soon, or they stayed in longer than they should have. The software problem, I think, was nationwide. It was a nationwide vendor.
That's right.
What is being done? Is the problem fixed? And will you guys, what happens next with that huge problem?
What we did was we wanted to make sure, I think that was in Clerk Stanton's office, was that we wanted to make sure that since it had deviated from the proper controls or the proper operating, that we give him what he needed to make sure that he keeps doing what he needs to do. Well, what we did was we asked him to bring back to us, some recommendations, and what are you doing to make sure it gets where it needs to be? And I felt, or I made the recommendation, was that I don't know why, before we move into a new system, why do we just don't pilot a few of the areas and keep the old one until we feel that this one is where it needs to be? But they jumped right into this one, and it just didn't work properly. And I in my field in business, we go to a new system, we always want to keep the old one at bay, just in case, before you make your step, to the new one. So I know Heidi Schaefer and some other commissioners, Commissioner Rowland, they're supposed to be bringing back some reports to us on a weekly basis to see, the updates and give us some weekly reports on the
improvements. Because there was fear of lawsuits, right? People's rights have been violated.
That's right.
There were lawsuits. Yeah, thank you.
People supposed to have been out of there and they were still in there. There were lawsuits.
Okay. Bill.
So we're talking about what's ahead at the start of the calendar year, but to be fair, the county government works on a slightly different schedule. You all's terms of office begins in September.
That's right.
The chairman for each year takes office in September, but this current group of commissioners is now in the middle of this term, been in office for more than 2 years at this point.
That's right.
How do you think this group of 13 individuals representing different areas, different issues, different priorities, how are you guys gelling so far?
I think so far so good. I think some of your newer commissioners, I think when when Commissioner Milton, brought up that piece or the caveat to where each commissioner used that $100,000 for their, for their districts. I think at first, some of your commissioners who probably don't have the same issues that we would have in the inner city, like blight, crime, closed schools, and just supporting groups to help maybe, tackle some of these issues, like some of your 501c3 companies. And I think, as we start bringing some of these grant, applicants, for approval, a lot of some of your commissioners who really don't have those issues, they were seeing seeing that maybe we can put money into read books, or put more money into after-school programs, put more money into maybe helping with the blight initiative, because sometimes the money just don't get in some of the people's hands to try to make a difference.
Right, and we should point out for people who don't know how county government works, in the past the administration would come with recommendations for the county government's going to give these grants to these nonprofit groups. And so what the commission did, this is the second year that you all have done this, is said, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have $1.3 million total that's going to be grants to local groups.
That's right.
And what's going to happen is each commissioner is going to be allocated $100,000 and in which to make grants to groups that they want to. They will propose the grants that can be in their district or not in their district, and take it to the full commission for a vote, and the full commission has to approve it.
That's right.
And a lot of times what we've seen is a commissioner will come up with an amount for a nonprofit group, and several other commissioners will also donate money from their allocation to that same group and build up that grant. So it's really worked across district lines.
It really has. And I think the last committee meeting, the boys club came up, and a lot of people jumped on that one because in the day when we were coming up, the boys club was a big deal, especially in some of our inner city neighborhoods, and some of those agencies have closed.
Right.
And trying to get those established. Now, hope, with this crime ad hoc committee that I set up, I think Commissioner Beza brought some report from New Orleans on how we can fight some of this crime. I'm hoping that at our ad hoc meeting, we can get together with some outside, like the Chairman Roundtable, Memphis Tomorrow, to where we can get resources and try to re-intervene with the YMCAs, community centers, swimming pools, and try to pump money back into some of these inner city housing areas to where kids used to go to in the summertime. Because when I was coming up, we used to go to Rose College and run with Southwestern then, used to run track, and they used to swim on certain days, and it kept kids busy. Right. So I think with those programs, with the help of the business community, we can get back on track with that.
To that end, is the 1.3 million enough? Is it possible that 1.3 million that's distributed across could be increased?
It's not enough.
Yeah.
But I would think, I think it only hits part or portions of what we're trying to do in our districts. But out of our crime ad hoc committee, we set up this chair by Commissioner Bailey. I'm hoping that we can pull the boys club and different agencies that can come in and be on our ad hoc committee, and we can let the public know, and let some of your corporations, Federal Express, International Paper, to where they can help us fund some of these summer activities for these kids, to where the funding for the city has closed a lot of our community centers and things for our kids to do. I still feel that our kids don't have enough to do in the summertime, and I think that could really make a big difference, which we can have community centers back open, after school programs, we can do things of that nature.
Talk about schools, and I should disclose, you're by day you work for the Shelby County School System.
Exactly right.
Okay, so we need to get that disclosure.
Sure.
Dorsey Hobson, superintendent, has a right-sizing plan. You all fund a big part of the school system, obviously.
Sure.
Are you happy with the direction of the school system from the point of view of the county commission? Okay, I know this.
Sure.
Again, full disclosure.
Sure.
That schools have to be closed. That there are 25,000 empty seats, give or take, according to Dorsey Hobson.
Sure.
Is the school district going in the right direction?
It's going in the right direction. And I've talked with the superintendent, and I think what he's doing is he has laid out to us a footprint of who you are in this new economy. And of course, charter schools are here to stay. And we try to, even in my district, I try to emphasize that you have to realize when you're in a school that's underutilized, you're really pretty much cheating the children, because you don't have the programs, you don't have the staffing, and you don't have the the things to get those kids the right rigor to get where they need to go, because a school is like a business. We get $12,000 per student. Well, that $12,000
state
from
and
the
from the federal
state,
government passes through.
yeah, through the state. So those funds have to keep the school up and running, heat and air, pay the teachers, pay the building engineers, pay the principals, and pay the different core curricular activities. So it doesn't do that.
But when you see, and you must hear from constituents who say, this school has been in our neighborhood for decades. It's the heart of our, of our neighborhood.
Sure.
It's going to, already maybe hit harder a neighborhood that's already struggling.
Sure.
I mean, you must have some, from a county commission point of view, some sympathy for those parents who are pleading that these schools not be closed.
And I do. I went to a town hall meeting in Northside with the same issue. I mean, Northside used to house over 2,500 students in that big building, but now it's being used now for the Central Nutrition Center kitchen at the bottom. Well, the parents came and spoke, and I told them, I said, now we can sit here all day and talk about how it used to be 30 and 40 years ago, but give us a plan. Give me a plan where I can take the Superintendent Hobson on how can we get students back in here. Give a plan. Let's walk away here with a plan instead of walking away with just a lot of jargon. Let's walk away with a plan.
Right.
Let's give us a plan.
All right, about 5 minutes left. Bill.
And to be fair, in Northside's case, it had been proposed for closing before, and the same type of discussion happened with the school system, where the school system said, all right, we'll give you another year or two, and 2 years in the case of Northside, to show us that you can increase enrollment, and it didn't happen.
That's right. And you know what, Bill, and also what I did was I told the parents there, I don't know, sometimes we're not subject to change, especially when we're like, let's take Melrose and Orange Mound. That's the heart of Orange Mound. Where Northside, to me, is the heart of North Memphis. But I said, now, look at the caveat where we're building, or they're building this crosstown charter school. I know some of y'all are pro-charter, but look at look at the pluses in it. Kid can walk to school. You're walking in businesses that are going to be housed there, and it's a new beginning. You got the technology. So, sometimes I think we're afraid of change, but I think, let's try to make sure that this is in the best interest of our children, our kids. And sometimes we have to change, for our kids.
The vote by the county commission for more funding for Shelby County schools in the current fiscal year that we're in was a really big moment. We're about to head into budget season again. What is that going to look like, not only for school funding, but overall? Are you guys dealing with a surplus this time? Are you not?
Well, it's still early, and we still hadn't, of course, both the district and both the administration has just had the annual audit, which will basically show you what our money's left over, excess, or shortage in the general fund as well as restricted. So we're waiting to see those numbers. I think on the next committee meeting, by state statute, by law, the Shelby County schools are supposed to report their revenue and expense summary to us on a quarterly basis. They will be reporting their revenue and expense summary on Wednesday's committee meeting. So we can kind of see where we are there, but it's kind of early, and we really don't know if they're going to be asking us for funds this year or where we are. I know last year the county's budget was right at $1.12 billion last year, so we just don't know where we are as far as what the ask is going to be, if there's going to be an ask or not for the school system.
And do you have any hint? It's a reappraisal year, so the last 2 years of home sales will, be calculated by the assessor's office. Do you have any hints from the assessor's office on what kind of? I mean, home sale prices are up by most accounts, but what's going to happen?
Well, believe it or not, I spoke with Trustee Lenore at the Liberty Bowl game, and I was asking him the same thing, and he wouldn't give me a definite answer.
Right.
Because you got to understand that sometimes the collection falls short sometimes, so it's kind of hard to. You can speculate it, but every time we try to speculate it, something happens and it's way off. So there again, we're still kind of early on the speculation.
A few minutes left, and I'm sorry to cut you off there. A couple just issues. There's been a kind of ongoing, simmering disagreement between the county mayor's office and the county commission about having a county attorney. That the commission ought to have. Some commissioners feel that the commission ought to have its own attorney, as I guess the city has. The council has an attorney. The mayor has an attorney. You all just renewed a contract for I guess it's not really a commission attorney, but legal. I don't know, legal consultant, Julian Bolton.
That's right.
It's about a $65,000 a year
$65,000 a year contract.
Is that an appropriate use of funds? I mean, do you all need that legal advice?
Yeah, at first I looked at it, not in a way that when it was done, but since I've been the chairman, I have gone to Commissioner Julian Bolton, and he's given me advice or just given me, can I do this? And he's given me like a pathway, which I think we need. Because in some interests, we might have good example. interest that we had of trying to make sure that we have those $100,000 per commissioner, where it was told to us that you can't do it by law. So we went on and got our own person. So those are some of the issues that you might need your own advice to see if you can do something that you're trying to do. But it's been a plus, for the commission to have an outside consultant like Julian Bowden.
And you all recently talked about, and I don't know if you settled your legislative priorities. The legislature is in session.
Sure.
The county commission, sets its priorities. I think the things that were talked about were BEP funding,
right.
which is the formula for schools. Funding, pre-K funding, and let's talk for a second about the incentives for movies and TV across the state. I think you all are trying to push for those to be more evenly distributed. Am I right on that?
Yeah, we are, because what's been happening is, because a lot of people have been coming to me about that, what's been happening is that people they've been coming in and shooting movies here and shooting
Right.
different scenes, and I don't know if we are experienced in this line, but a lot of dollars are moving out of Memphis. This has been shot right here.
Right.
It's been taken like to your Nashville, your Arkansas. So we're trying to figure out how do we keep some of these important movies that we're seeing that's showing Memphis and Shelby County in the movies, and we're not receiving the dollars. So that's something we're really, really strongly looking at.
And the beer tax on the local breweries, you all want to get rid of that? Is that correct?
Well, now, Commissioner Basil brought that up.
Okay.
He wants to take out the beer tax, but the administration said that they would, look into it and see if we can do it, make sure it don't hurt the school funding. So that's on the go.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you.
Really
I appreciate
appreciate it.
you.
Thank you, Bill. And thank you for joining us. Join us again next week.